Hello, so welcome to another video on getting started with gPROMS. Today, we are going to look at the structure of gPROMS. Basically, if you want to run simulation in gPROMS, then how do you go about that? Okay, so this is how the interface looks like. So if we have not watched the previous video, please watch the previous video so that you can understand these different tools in gPROMS. Okay, so to run a simulation in gPROMS, so you can start a new file. So if you click on File, New, so a new worksheet will open. Then you have a new project here, and so you have a number of entities, but you don't need all these entities to run simulation. To run a simple simulation in gPROMS, you need the variable type entity. If you have variables in your system, you need the model and the process. So you need these three. This, that, and that. And that's what we are going to do. So in the variable type, if you click on variable type, right click, new entity, and choose, let's say one of your variable is length. So your variable type is length, click on length, then you can edit that. You click on edit, you can specify the upper bound and lower bound. If you specify the upper bound, so that's the minimum value it can take, and the upper bound is the maximum value it can take. So if I specify an upper bound of, let's say, 10,000 and leave it as a lower bound of 0, then a default value of 0.5. So this default value is what gPROMS will use to initialize the variable system. So for unit, you can choose unit of length, which is meters in gPROMS. If you click, which is meters, or you can specify it as a plain text. You can click on plain text and then specify meters yourself. So here, if you're not consistent, it's still not going to be a problem. It won't affect the calculation. But if you choose the default unit in gPROMS, you have to be consistent. Otherwise, it's going to mess up with the calculation. Okay, so that's length. Then if you want to add another variable type, you can click on new. For example, let's say I want to call it another one called node type. So node type means I don't really care about the physical meaning of that variable. I just want to connect with something. So if I give it maybe 1e to the power of, let's say, 5, so which is basically 10050 zeros. You can do that. Then you can also go to a negative lower bound, let's say minus 1e power of 2, for example, which is minus 100. You can do that, and now you have two variable types created. Then I can then go to the model. Let's say I've created all the variable types that I need. And model, so let's call it like test. And okay, then I have this, come to the gPROMS language. This is where you do the custom modeling, where you write all the equations. So you have parameters. If you have parameters in your model, you can activate that. So because this is how you comment in gPROMS. Hash to indicate the section of the code that you don't want to run. So that's how you include comment in gPROMS. So parameter, you specify the parameter you have in your system. If you don't, you can delete all the ones you don't need. So parameter, variable, and equations. So these are usually the basic ones that you need. Then here, you specify the parameter that you need. You specify the parameter you need, depending on what model you are solving. So the parameter here, parameters, they don't change throughout the simulation. So they are constants. So you usually connect them to types like integer, real, binary, and so on, depending on the nature of the parameter. So we just do, for example, if I want to declare area, and I say area as real. So this is how you declare it. in gPROMS. So area as real is a real value. If I want to, let's say I want to declare number of something. So the number is an integer. So let's say the number of cars in the model, for example. So you just say number, or let's say n as integer. Okay, so that's how you declare the parameter. Then for variables, if you have a variable in your model, so for example, concentration, flow rate, and the likes, or current, for example, in your model, you declare the variable, let's say C as concentration, then you say as, connect it to a variable type here. All variables are connected to a variable type here. So as, it has to be connected to one of the variable types here. So let's say it's concentration, you need to add concentration here, and you say as concentration. So concentration has to be a variable type here. Okay, then for all the variables you have, you do the same thing. Then you write your equations here. So you remember your equation will comprise of your parameters and variables. Okay, so once you do that, you have a model that you can solve. Now you have a model that you can solve. To solve that, a model in gPROMS is like something that you can reuse. So if you have your model here, you can reuse, you can keep running this model multiple times in the process. So the process is where I want to run it. So if I right click on process, new entity, and I say run test, for example, then I can specify, the first thing I need to do is to specify the unit. So I create an instance of that model. So under unit, so I'll just say, let's say test, I want to call it test as test. So this test is basically the name I want to use in my for my model in the process, and this test is the model name here. Okay, so I'm giving it a different name. You can give it a different name. Let's say R11 as test. So which means you are no longer using test in the process, you'll be using R11 all through. So that's the unit. You also have the set. So in the set, you specify you set the parameters. You also need assign if you have degrees of freedom you need to specify some variables in order to make the degrees of freedom 0. You do that under assign. Then if you have differential equations in your model, then you also have you can also do that. You need to provide initial conditions. So you do that under initial. Okay. And once you provide all this information, then you can run your simulation under schedule. There's a section called schedule. Then you specify how long you want to run the simulation for. And just say continue for, this is maybe 10 seconds or 10. And you run it. So that's how to run your simulation in gPROMS. So basically, you need the units. You don't need variable here most of the times, but in some cases you might need it. Then to specify the parameters, you do that under set. Then sometimes you might need equation in the process as well. But to make it general, we usually put all the equations in the model. Then assign, this is where you specify some variables in order to make the degrees of freedom 0. So that's under assign. Initial, if you have differential equation, you need to provide initial condition. So solution parameters, for example, if you want to specify let's say after how many seconds you want to output the result. So we can specify that under solution parameter. Then schedule, that's how you want to run it. So usually do for a basic simulation, continue for, and how long? Let's say 10 seconds, and then you run it. So these are the basic sections that you need. You need unit, set, assign, initial, solution parameters. You don't have to specify this one. Normally, you don't need that. It depends on whether you want to change some default settings. You can use the default setting. then schedule, then you run the simulation for how long you need it. So this initialization procedure, you don't worry about it. So, and you run it. So that's it for this video, and I will see you in the next video. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you find it useful. Thank you. Bye-bye.